Let's face it, getting a new roof is expensive. When you finally get that price from a roofer, it can be a little shocking sometimes. And a lot of people end up saying to us, Charlie, my neighbor paid $7,000. Why does my roof cost $10,000? Well, I'm Charlie from Dreamworx Exteriors, and today I want to explain to you 7 factors that can affect the price of your new roof. Thanks for watching. So number 1, and probably the most obvious, is going to be the size, right? The size of your roof is going to play a huge factor in how much you're going to pay. This is all relevant because roofs are generally measured in what we call squares. A square is a 10 by 10 area, or 100 square feet equals 1 square. Obviously, the more squares that your roof is, the more material you have to buy, the more labor that's involved. So if you have a large roof, kind of goes without saying, but you're gonna pay more than the guy with a smaller roof. Okay, so number 2 is gonna be the type of materials that you're planning to use. Asphalt shingles and metal panels are by far the most common choices, at least in our area, when it comes to a residential re-roof. But those 2 items can carry very, very different price tags. So a metal roof will typically be more expensive due to just the labor involved with its installation. Metal requires more careful cuts and planning than its counterpart with asphalt shingles. So that's going to result in more labor and sometimes more material to get to cover the same square footage. If you're interested in learning more about the pros and cons, the differences between shingles and metal, check out the video that we have linked right up here for a more in-depth look at these 2 choices. Okay, so number 3 is what we're going to call the difficulty factor. The difficulty factor includes things like pitch, accessibility, and the complexity of the roof's structure. A roof that would be categorized as unwalkable is going to slow labor productivity due to the use of jacks and planks and scaffolding and things like that. Accessibility, it's a big factor. If your home is surrounded by trees and power lines, that could affect our ability to get material to the rooftop. In this case, materials would have to be carried up by hand, which would then obviously require more labor. The last part of the difficulty factor is the complexity of the roof. A cut up, multifaceted roof is going to require more material than a simple up and over gable roof, right? So a 24 square style, a 24 square hip roof is going to require 10 to 15% more material than a 24 square gable style roof due to the waste that has to be cut across your hips, and those shingles then cannot be reused because they're cut at an angle. Okay, so number 4 is permitting. If you live in an area that requires permits for a roofing project, it's going to be an additional cost. A typical permit is calculated off of it's as a percentage of the total contract amount. So the larger your roof, probably the more you're going to pay for your building permit, right? Furthermore, if you need, if you live in a historic district or certain other parts of the country where you have to have an inspection of the decking, and once it's torn off, such as Florida and some of those kind of states, that's going to be time that a roofer has to come back out and meet with the inspector and fix any issues that there may be. So that's all going to drive up the cost there. All right, so number 5 is going to be the type of material that's being removed. In our area of Pennsylvania, we see a lot of roofs that have 2 layers of shingles on them. So when you think about this, that's going to drive up costs, pretty substantially, because now let's say you have an average 24 square roof. Well, you're actually tearing off 48 squares and you're installing 24. So by tearing off that 48 squares, you're going to have additional labor. You're going to have additional disposal fees. You're going to have to bring a larger trailer, larger truck, whatever it may be, to get all of that extra debris out of there. Maybe you have a wood shake shingle and you want to get rid of those old wood shakes and you want to go back with a shingle. Well, you might have to budget a little bit more money because there's a good chance you might have to resheet your entire roof over top of the existing lath boards because you just can't install shingles over those type of boards. And to that effect, if you're going from a wood shake shingle to a shingle, you might have to detach and reset a lot of siding and cut a lot of siding because you're changing the thickness of the product. Wood shakes being this thick, shingles being this thick, you're gonna have to maybe replace some siding so you don't have a ton of step flashing being exposed, going up the walls or any area that the roof intersects a wall. Okay, so number 6 is gonna be what type of roofing warranty you choose to get with your new roof. A lot of companies offer extended warranties from their respective shingle manufacturers that, they include things like workmanship coverage, warranties against blue-green algae, or extra coverage against, really strong winds. These warranties usually require specific materials or special installation methods to appease that manufacturer's criteria for that warranty, right? So these special materials are usually an upgraded version of what's typically readily available, and that is then going to carry a larger price tag. And last but not least, number 7, this is what we're gonna call other roofing components. So other roofing components encompasses things such as plywood replacement, skylight replacement, or upgrading ventilation. If you live in an older home that has, plank board decking with, gaps between the boards, your roof may require an extra layer of plywood to be installed so we can comply with the manufacturer's installation requirements. Now that's a worst case scenario, but certainly something that needs to be considered if you live in an older home, and you can usually catch this kind of stuff by doing an inspection in the attic prior to ripping off the roof and then coming across it. Some of these things may not be directly correlated to the roof itself, but they're things that complement or they enhance your roofing system. Things like adding proper ventilation is going to increase the life of your shingles. It's going to appease the manufacturer because they require certain ventilation standards for the full warranty on their shingles, or even something like skylights. Generally you're going to pay a higher upfront cost because you're going to have to replace the skylights while you replace that roof. Now we always recommend to replace them every single time because generally speaking, it's going to be cheaper for you to do it the first time while the rest of the roof is ripped off and the shingles are removed than it is to hire a roofer to come back and replace them 5, 6, 7 years down the road. If you would pay $1,000 for one skylight while you're doing your roof, you could be paying, $1,500 to $1,800, maybe $2,000 to have another roofer come back years down the road to replace that same skylight. All right, guys, so those are 7 key factors that can affect the price that you pay for your new roof on your home. There's a ton of other items that we could have touched on, but these are just some of the most common ones that we come across a lot and that we always consider when we put together an estimate for a roofing project. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch. Again, I'm Charlie from Dreamworx Exteriors, and we'll see you on the next video.